Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are playing Enchantress. Now this is a deck that I've never played before, but somebody requested I give it a go. So, what is this deck and what does it do? Firstly, as you can imagine, cards with Enchantress pretty important for this deck. So we have Argothian Enchantress and Enchantress's Presence, and we also have Sythis. So what all these do is draw you cards when you play enchantments. So we've got a bunch of enchantments from Wild Growth to Ramp Out, Utopia Sprawl to Ramp Out, On Thin Ice with our snow-covered lands to try and remove some of our opponent's creatures, Paladin Class, which presumably has a way of taxing our opponent's mana on our turn so we can resolve things more easily, but it can also make one of our guys enormous. We've got some Rest in Peace because Graveyard's pretty important right now. We've got Destiny Spinner, which is an enchantment creature, and this means that creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered once it's in play, so this can hopefully let you just spam all your enchantments, and it turns all your lands into guys so you can beat down with them. Sterling Grove, this is a thing that protects all your enchantments, and it can also sacrifice to tutor for an enchantment upon top of your library. Solitary Confinement, so this is you have Shroud, prevent all damage that will be dealt to you. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this card unless you discard a card. So the idea is, you put this into play when you've got a load of things that draw you cards all the time. So you kind of get to ignore the drawback on it and you just become invincible, which is pretty good because if you prevent all damage dealt to you, you can't lose the initiative, which is quite important in this current meta. We have one Touch of the Spirit Realm, which is it can be a blink effect or it can be a removal spell. And obviously we can shoot it for that with Sterling Groves. It's nice to have in there. We have one Green Sun Zenith in case we need to find... so it's basically just another copy of Enchantress and Destiny Spinner and Sythis. But from the sideboard, it can also be an Endurance or a Collector Roof. Then we have two Helm of Obedience, because if we've got these Rest in Pieces, we may as well have an I Win button as well. This does not find Helm of Obedience, so we will just have to naturally draw it, but hopefully we'll be drawing a lot of cards. Tucked away in our land, we've got a fair bit of utility. We have this one Bayou, which we'll talk about in a second from our sideboard. A couple of Boseijus and a Karakas, pretty standard lands that you'd expect for this color combination. Three Serra Sanctum. These are going to be used to power out even more mana. Now we only want 3 of them because they're legendary and they're not essential for our deck, but they are pretty handy from what I gather. And we've got a bunch of snow-covered lands. So let's just make a little count of 1, 2, 3, 4 forests and a plains. Need to keep that number in my mind because it might become relevant. 1 Savannah, 1 Bayou. All right. So let's talk about the sideboard here. Collector Roof to find with a Green Sun Zenith. Endurance to find with Green Sun Zenith. A couple of Force of Vigor to blow up various artifacts and enchantments our opponents may have. Some disruption against combo decks because we're probably going to be a bit cold to these combo decks. So we've got these Thoughtseize to hopefully help that out. A couple of Carpet Flowers. We have a lot. We can do all sorts of things with loads of mana. And this is an enchantment. So this is just really good against blue decks. We can just play this and we can use the mana from it quite easily every turn. I hate the initiative button. A couple of things to blow up planeswalkers or sometimes hit creatures. This should maybe be the new enchantment card. But I guess if you're boarding it in, you probably want something that doesn't get caught by like enchantment hate, perhaps. Maybe that's the reason for this one. And we have one Doomwake Giant just to mess with elves. Now we can go and shoot it for this using Sterling Grove. So having 1 is actually having 4. So this should be pretty good against the old elf matchup, I would imagine. And that's pretty much it for the deck. Like I said, I've not played this deck before, but hopefully we should be able to work out what the right plays are going through, because we're not doing too much apart from stuff on our own turn in theory. So I should hopefully be able to navigate it, but I apologise to any Enchantress players who watch me do it and I don't exactly play perfectly due to my unfamiliarity. Alright, before we jump into a league, plug time. Like, comment, subscribe. These things cost you nothing and they really help me out, so why not do that? Alright, let's play some Legacy Enchantress. Right, we're on the play. This is our opening hand. Obviously, it doesn't cast any spells, so let's mulligan. Okay, we can keep this one. Probably throwing back the... is it the Karakas or is it the Paladin Class? I think we'll bin off the Karakas here. We could definitely regret that, but this will get us a basic forest. So when this comes to play, we choose a colour. We're going to choose white, so this can just tap for Sterling Grove on the next turn. Now it's our opponent's turn. An Underground Sea. This usually means unfair matchups, so this is going to be a difficult one for us to get through, I would imagine. This Thoughtseize is probably hitting our Sterling Grove. Could hit the Helm of Obedience just because that's a recognised way of winning a game. So if they get rid of that, then probably right. But Sterling Grove could represent anything. Sterling Grove gone as expected. Now our opponent might be on something like Death Shadow instead, rather than a combo deck. But we don't really have a lot of choice of how we play around this one. So we'll play out this land they know about. We'll play out this Paladin Class. We don't have the mana to level this up now. Not that we have anything that's going to be good with it right now anyway. And then we pass, because that's all we can do, really. We don't have any like brainstormy type things, so the Misty Rainforest isn't going to be the most useful. We also don't have an Enchantress effect, which I suppose we're probably supposed to mulligan for. This was probably not a very good hand, but like I said, I'm not very familiar with the deck. We'll leave this uncracked for now. We don't necessarily know what mana we want from this. Alright, so we've got an Enchantress. Let's play this one out. It'll cost our opponent an additional mana to interact with this because of our Paladin Class, but casting a Force of Will here is pretty elementary for them. They know we don't actually have an enchantments in hand, but they know that we're going to have a bunch of them coming up at some point. Looks like we're getting our Enchantress. Okay, so we could do with drawing some enchantments to go with our Enchantress. Polluted Delta from our opponent. Cracking their Verdant Catacombs. Opponent's casting a Brainstorm. So we're going to lose this Helm of Obedience because our opponent knows we've got it in there. So they're obviously choosing to take that now. Opponent's cracking their Polluted Delta in their second main phase. Tropical Island is probably going to be for a Ponder, I would imagine. There's a Ponder. So our opponent could be anywhere from like Bug mid-range through Ad Nauseam Tendrils to even Bug Doomsday. It seems unlikely they're Bug Doomsday with 2 Tropical Islands. That doesn't seem like a thing you'd want. So I'm leaning more towards them being... Alright. So our opponent can't counter this. So this gets us a card, and if it's an enchantment, which it is, but it's not one we can cast. Not this turn anyway. Alright, next turn we can start the ball rolling. Every enchantment we play draws us 2 cards. Not a bad position to be in. But again, we don't really know what our opponent's doing. They could just have us dead this turn. They could be an Ad Nauseam Tendrils deck and just go and get us now. Just only had a lot of time to sit and sculpt and pick us apart. Our hand's been very slow and poor, to be honest. Polluted Delta. Black and a green. An Assassin's Trophy on our Enchantress's Presence. Okay. We'll go and get ourselves this Plains. Casting this. Not so great right now. We don't have any targets for it. Okay, this is an alright one. Let's cast this. So this will get us a card as soon as we cast it. If we can follow up with another one, then we'll be pretty good. Alternatively, we can funnel some mana into the Paladin Class and start getting minor beats going. Force of Will pitching Ura. Okay, our opponent doesn't look like an unfair deck anymore. Sterling Grove. I think we just want to keep trying to draw cards here. So we have an answer for things like Uro. Now what is the question? I think we just have to pass. We can sacrifice Sterling Grove if we want anything specific. So like a Sythis, for example. But we'll see what our opponent does here. So I'm relatively happy just funneling a load of mana into our Paladin Class right now. But we'll see what our opponent does. So front half of an Uro. Get themselves the card. So when this comes back, we've got a pretty easy answer to it with On Thin Ice. We can touch the Spirit Realm as well. Now our opponent has shown us Assassin's Trophy, so they will have a removal spell that can hit it at some point. So we've got to be careful in terms of how we attack with our creatures if we get to put one of them underneath our snow enchantments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we'll leave the Sterling Grave in play for another turn. So we're just going to level up our Paladin Class. Our opponent doesn't have the ability to make a blocker that can kill this unless it's a Snapcaster Mage. That's the only one that can. I don't think it's worth us playing into Snapcaster Mage here. Actually, no. Spells, it's all spells, isn't it? Spells your opponent's cast during your turn. Okay, yeah. So we can go and get one damage in. And then we're going to put the Sythis on top for next turn, and then we can spam out a load of spells in one go. Something like a Pernicious Deed is unlikely to be in our opponent's deck, but would be very good against us. You just don't see a lot of Pernicious Deeds these days. Mystic Sanctuary. What are they going to put on top? Is this a Ponder, or is this some Disruption? This isn't their upkeep, so they're going to get to draw whatever they put on top here. Okay, they want the Force of Will. Alright. Are they just going to hold back to hardcast this, or are they looking... Because I need 6 mana to hardcast it because of our Paladin Class. Or are they going to play the Uro and keep 1 mana up? Looks like they're going for the Uro line, which is fine. We will Sterling Grove at their end step for the Sythis, which will be a really good bait spell for this Force of Will we know about. And that'll be their only spell for the turn, and then we can kill the Uro. Question is, do you want a Sythis or do an... I think Sythis is just cheaper to cast for us, so we want to get the Sythis. Oh, hello, Sythis. We'll crack this. And we'll get a Savannah first. So we'll cast a Sythis. This will be the bait spell that will get the Force of Will out of our opponent. It did not. Interesting. That is interesting. Let's draw some more cards. We've still got a land drop to make here. This also gains us a life when we cast an enchantment spell, so that's pretty handy. And crack this. Going ourselves a forest. We haven't tapped our mana in the best function here, have we? Let's just play out this Enchantress's Presence, draw a whole bunch of cards. Like, our draw engine is way more powerful than our opponent's Uro. Serra Sanctum will be nice in following turns. Let's target this permanent. I'm suspecting that our On Thin Ice is going to get countered, but we're drawing 3 cards from it already. Yeah, okay, so if we get another turn, we're A-okay, I think. Just exile this Uro. Get our little 1 damage in. Pretty solid turn. Pernicious Deed is like the thing I'm worried about now. Unlikely, but very scary if they have it. This Serra Sanctum is tapping for a lot now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the Serra Sanctum will tap for 6, plus whatever I cast before it. So we just need to find a really good win condition here. Now we can put a load of mana into the Paladin class and just level up this, which just makes a large creature. Boseiju targeting the On Thin Ice. That's totally fine. We have 1 more land here. All of our lands fetch the Bayou, I believe. So we just get a snow-covered forest here. So they get the Uro back, but it will immediately die. Now they can replay it, but we've obviously got Touch the Spirit Realm already. We've just got everything we need here. It should be very difficult for our opponent to come back from this level of card advantage. This is the sort of matchup you want to see. Sort of slower, grindier ones where all of our cards end up just amounting for so much more in terms of raw card number. They're doing well to keep up, but it's going to go out of hand on the next turn. Also, Boseiju only costs 1 now because of Sythis, which is pretty cool. So they crack this for a green source and can cast the Uro. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cracking they're playing quite slowly. They've got 4 minutes less on their clock than me already. Bayou, so there's the green source. Green, green, blue, blue. Here comes the Uro. Our opponent didn't draw a land. So they've got 5 spells in hand, but they can't cast spells on our turn because of the Paladin class. So we're doing alright, I would say. Let's put this Utopia Sprawl on this. Hold on, do you want to draw some more cards first? We think we probably do. Let's play Argothian Enchantress. This will resolve. And we will put this Boseiju on this forest. Sorry, not this Boseiju, this Utopia Sprawl. We're drawing a lot of cards. Okay, we just can win on this turn anyway. So we will play Rest in Peace. This is the quickest route to winning the game here. We could try and grind our opponent's clock if we wanted to, but it's not really necessary. So our opponent can't interact with us because of Paladin class. Yeah, so then we mill them out, but this says you keep repeating the process until X cards or a creature card have gone into their graveyard, and Rest in Peace stops cards going into graveyard, so you just mill out their whole deck into exile. We don't get to see their deck because they conceded first. Okay, so some sort of bug control list. Carpet Flowers are going to let us get a lot of mana ahead of our opponent. We've seen some graveyard stuff, and we've seen counter spells. So Thoughtseize is something we could use to pick apart that. Fateful Absence can also get rid of Uro permanently. The Endurances are just good cards that we could have if we want them. So these are all things that we could be looking at as options. However, do we need those options? I don't think we actually need Solitary Confinement in this matchup. I think we can just outpace them with what we're doing here. So I don't think we need those. The Paladin classes were pretty great. I think our removal-y stuff looks fine here. Destiny Spinner is going to be pretty decent. They're going to be playing around this Helm of Obedience quite a lot. So what have we got? We've got 2 cards at the moment. So that would give us 2 Carpet of Flowers just to accelerate our mana if we want these Endurances or these Fateful Absences. Now the problem with Fateful Absence is that our opponent might be able to, with the general removal we have, is that our opponent might be able to remove our removal, which is certainly a concern. These Endurances are going to be decent though. I think we want to try and get one. I think we can trim on Thin Ice. Do you want to trim on a second one? Or do you want to trim on one of these Sterling Groves? I'd rather have a Sterling Grove. I guess they're probably going to be more likely to have removal now, so we'll try it like this. We're just very much saying no Uros, and then hopefully their control elements just eventually get crushed under the fact that we're making Shroud Guys and loads of card advantage. Now we could get a little bit caught out because Argothian Enchantress is human druid, so they can have something like a Plague Engineer. So maybe we should trim one of these, just for one of these, for the purpose of Plague Engineer. We have 2 turns to draw a land. I think we should just mulligan this instead of trying to get cute with it. We do have a lot of good cards in this hand, though. We have 27 cards in the deck that produce mana, though. And 2 draws. So statistically, we're on to hit that. Like, our hand is pretty good. Well, obviously, it's got loads of spells in it. Maybe I'm not supposed to keep this one land. The fact that this is a non-basic, this is a basic, certainly helps. All right. Not the start we wanted. We wanted to find a land there. But we have a win available in our hand if we can deploy all the cards. Now, our opponent is a Thoughtseize deck. They didn't Thoughtseize on 1, which is interesting. That means they probably don't have it. Because you probably Thoughtseize on 1. I guess maybe you Thoughtseize on 2, so you can hit an Argothian Enchantress the turn before I play it. I'm surprised our deck doesn't have Choke-in. That feels like quite a good enchantment that you might want. But I guess these sort of slower, grindier blue decks don't really exist that much at the moment. We just sort of happen to have found one. Another Tropical Island. So this is not representing any discard just yet. A Ponder. There is a chance our opponent is a combo deck with like an Uro backup plan. I feel we would have seen something else then. We saw like Abrupt Decays and Thoughtseizes and Counterspells. Felt like it was more on the control-y spectrum. So we really need to draw a mana source this turn. That would be lovely. Look at that. Never punished. So I suppose we either drop the Destiny Spinner or the Enchantress, right? Let me go for the Enchantress. That way we are more likely to draw an extra card next turn, which we might want to help us hit mana. Our opponent doesn't know that we're close to missing a land drop though. And I haven't seen any wastelands from our opponent. That could be quite greedy in a 3-color deck trying to cast Uro. This could be the Plague Engineer that we were worried about. Yep. Okay, I absolutely called it. We could have played Sythis, but Sythis died to other removal. Okay, I'd very much like to draw a mana source this turn. As long as we keep drawing mana sources, I think we'll be alright. Did not draw a mana source, that's interesting. So we can shut the graveyard off this turn, or we can play out this Sythis and hope that it lives a turn. Let's try this one out. Okay. So we can remove this Plague Engineer when we want to. Ideally, we want to be able to draw multiple cards next turn off of like Paladin Class into like a green spell and having a land and that sort of jazz would be really nice. What is this? A Narset. Okay, that's pretty good against us trying to draw cards. Right, this could be a tricky one. We're still gaining life, but that's not really what we want. It's in a Ponder. Let's attack down their Narset. This way, if they activate Narset, they don't get to have the Narset static ability in play anymore. This is a good example of why you want Fateful Absence over the new one that's just like a super pacifism, because the static ability will stay in play under that one, because it's just activated abilities that get shut off from that new one. A Ponder. If we draw a Serra's Sanctum, we can play the Paladin Class, activate it, and then kill the Narset with our Sythis. Black and green, that's usually killing your stuff colours. Assassin's Trophy on our forest. It's not amazing for us, is it? Let's get another forest. Okay, what does this Boseiju do? I think we are on... See if we can get a Paladin Class into play first, because that protects the next thing we do. So this is a human creature. Understood. And we still play this one out. So we have a way of winning the game in terms of Rest in Peace, Helm of Obedience. So a Serra's Sanctum will give us 3 mana. 4, 5, 6. So we need 1 more mana on top of that. I guess no, we play the Rest in Peace first, and then we tap the Serra's Sanctum. Yeah, so Serra's Sanctum next turn, if our opponent taps low, will win us the game. Paladin Class looking pretty good, I would say. Just that little extra tax in. Now, our little house of cards can definitely come undone. So what does this make? It makes an elemental with trample and haste until end of turn. So we could make a guy to bash the Narset if we draw another mana source. I'm not a big fan of that play, but depending on what happens, it's going to be a... Okay, they are a Pernicious Deed deck. Alright, that's pretty horrible for us. Understood. So we're going to lose 3 permanents to this. Now, we still have a win condition available to us, and we're not under a lot of pressure. And our opponent's clock is quite low. I don't know if they can realistically win 2 games in this time. I don't really want to win games that way, but... Right, let's just fire this one off now. Just get rid of their graveyard. Give us something to work towards. They don't seem to be very much on the old counter spells here, so we might just be able to get them. Or they're holding their counter spells for a very specific thing in Helm of Obedience. Okay, they've let their Narset go, which I think is probably an error, unless they got another one. Oh, okay. They got here Force of Negation. And another Narset, yeah. So that was expected. Let's see if they Force of Negation on our Enchantress's presence. And a Force of Will. Oakley dokily. Message understood. So if we could draw a mana source here, then we can deploy Enchantress's Presence and Thin Ice. I doubt they're going to counter the Enchantress's Presence, but we might be able to use it as a bait spell. It's worth a go, right? We got 2 of them, they're not doing anything right now. We don't have a Savannah, so this has to get us. So we can't double spell like this, which is really annoying. Wouldn't mind another Savannah in this deck. I understand why there isn't one, but... Well, we can double spell, actually. We can Thin Ice this way, can't we? What am I on about? Let's see if this is good enough. Not a big fan of Abrupt Decay being able to hit our... sorry, not Assassin's Trophy being able to hit our land that we've enchanted. That feels a little bit worrying for us. Okay, so they've exiled an Uro for the Force of Negation. So they still have a Force of Will in hand. Oh, they don't have the scariest of clocks. We still have an Endurance in our deck that we might be able to flash in at an opportune moment and then bash away at the Narset and unlock our hand. But we're just trying to get through this Force of Will now. Another Pernicious Deed. Understood. Very mean. So they can use it to clear the Rest in Peace, but they can't clear the Enchantress's Presence with it without killing their Plague Engineer. And it doesn't kill Narset though, because this specifically states Artifact, Creature, Enchantment. There's Pernicious Deed. We've got 4 cards in hand, including a Force of Will. And we still play these out because it gives us more mana with a Serra Sanctum. And it might bait our opponent into making a mistake with their Pernicious Deed and killing their Plague Engineer. Seems very unlikely. They got 5 minutes left on their clock to win 2 games, so I think we're probably okay at the speed they're playing. Brainstorm. True Name Nemesis. That's a real clock. Let's try and marginally thin our deck. A Utopia Sprawl. At some point we might just have to go for the Helm through a Force of Will. But I don't think that's this turn. Like, we go for it the turn 2 turns before they kill us in case we just draw runner, Helm of Obedience. So we take 5 this turn. And next turn we take another 5. So we might have to play it this turn. A Windswept Heath. So we play it this turn in case we draw it next turn. Or we hold it in case we draw a Destiny Spinner or... No, Destiny Spinner is only creatures and enchantments, isn't it? Yeah, there's no way we're forcing this through. Alright. We're going to get this counter spell out of our opponent's hand. They can hardcast it as well. But we had to work on it. Okay, they didn't need to do that, but they pitched... on the spell. So our plan is to draw another one next turn. We have 1 more land to fetch in our deck. Because this puts us to lethal from the True Name, it doesn't really matter much what we do with this land because we're already pretty much dead. We just need to hope they don't have a counter spell and we can draw Helm of Obedience. Right, that's the last basic fetchable. The only other one is the Bayou. Sterling Grove. This puts it on top, which is not ideal for us. But we'll play it. Use some of our opponent's clock since they've been taking quite a long time. We may as well take advantage of that a little bit. Puts him on the stack for our opponent to waste their time doing. Alright, so we basically just lost because of Narset there. And that's on me really. So let's get these Fateful Absences in. Can't want these Thoughtseizes to pluck the Narset because it's one of the only things that really scares us here. So we can take out these Sterling Groves. A little bit worried about some of these other effects. Doomweight Giant is going to be good versus the True Name Nemesis if we just want to sort of keep ourselves alive for a while. Do we need this Green Sun Zenith? I don't think we do, to be honest. It's just repeatable things we can do. So Argothian Enchantress is obviously pretty bad versus the Plague Engineer. So let's strip out one of those. Strip out Enchantress's Presence. We're just trying not to lose the game, really. I'm not sure we need these carpets necessarily. Let's take out Green Sun, maybe. I don't know. We're just trying not to lose the game here, so... We got 4 minutes to survive. We have a removal spell for Narset. We will keep this. We can go Basics, Forest, into Wild Growth, into Enchantress's Presence. Or we can Thoughtseize our opponent, but I'd rather save that for the turn before they play Narset, so they're more likely to have it as a thing that we can remove. So, what we play on our next turn will depend entirely on what we draw, I think. On Thin Ice. Interesting. So we play out the Boseiju and the Enchantress's Presence here. Next turn, we'll go get a Bayou and Thoughtseize our opponent the turn before the Narset can come down. Force of Will, pitching Ponder. Sure. Maybe we're supposed to Thoughtseize then to try and force that through next turn. But like I said, we're in stall mode, I think, here. Because our opponent's got less than 4 minutes on their clock. They've got a 2-mana threat that we need to worry about. We have On Thin Ice as well. So we've got a lot of stuff covered here. Just going to be the Assassin's Trophy on our forest. Witherbloom Command. Time to play mill through cards. Okay. I got Reanimate in that deck. Interesting. Alright. Not particularly concerned about how that went. Play this. Go and get ourselves a Bayou. I haven't actually seen black mana from my deck yet either. This might come as a bit of a shock for them. Okay, their opponent has just lands in hand. And they're a bit of a ways off of Mystic Sanctuary buying back one of their spells. We have the first two things they play covered. So it's Underground Sea. Sythis. We could resolve our Sythis now, but we probably want to play it with a spell attached to it, right? So I think we just hold here. Probably getting a basic off of our Windswept Heath here when the time comes. Okay, Polluted Delta, they're cracking it, so they've got something. Sure, an Uro. We have an answer for this on the backside. And we get to draw a card off of it when that happens. Potentially. What are they putting in? It's Misty Rainforest we know about? Sure. They're going to Thoughtseize us. They are going to Thoughtseize us. It's a little bit of a punish for keeping the Sythis in hand there. We've got two answers to their creature. Are they going to take one of the answers? Can't really afford to think that long about that decision. Turn out our deck marginally. We don't really have cool tricks we can do with our fetch lands, so... Green and white will play... Then we'll play this and draw a card. Gain life. So we could Thoughtseize our opponent now, or we could hold up the Fateful Absence. Do I think our opponent's got a removal spell or not here is the question. So I think our opponent has a way of dealing with our removal spell and we probably want to Thoughtseize them. Otherwise we just hold up. I think we just hold up the Fateful Absence. Purely because the Fateful Absence, the white mana off of the Snow-Covered Forest is also going to be better. Our opponent's got one blank card in hand. One card we don't know what is in hand. So next turn when they play the Mystic Sanctuary, they will put something back on top of their library. And they can draw it with their Uro. So this is why we get to do it in response when they don't have the... So if they put Force of Will on top, as they go to draw it with the Uro, we can Fateful Absence their Uro. There's the Thoughtseize. Okay. So they either do that or we're getting slightly punished for the previous play that I said could happen. Our opponent's got 2 minutes to try and win the game. Interesting. They're certainly taking their sweet time about their turns. Okay, there's the Mystic Sanctuary. What are they going to put back on top of their library? Witherbloom Command. What are the actual modes on Witherbloom Command? -3, -1. Lose 2 life, gain 2 life, mill 3. Okay. That's a weird one to put on top in my opinion. Fair enough. Serra Sanctum, not that useful. I think we should be Thoughtseizing now. Check this Ponder. Our opponent's just got Snow-Covered Island in hand. So we keep this Serra Sanctum so that they suspect we have something. We've just Thoughtseize that turn. Maybe they drew the Thoughtseize though. Okay, so we can take 6 this turn. And go to 8. They didn't play their island there. Interesting. I don't really want to play this Thoughtseize because of what it does to our life total. If they have a removal spell, they can just fire it off now. We'll play this one out. So we know they have the Witherbloom Command in hand, so we have to block here. They have the Fatal Push. And we know they got Witherbloom. Oh, I'm pretty tilted from losing this one where our opponent wasted our entire time by playing incredibly slowly. We've got 7 minutes difference on the clock here. Sure, you can take our Thoughtseize. Are they intentionally trying to take their time on this one? Sure. And that's the game. So maybe that turn where we could have Thoughtseized, we should have done that. But again, I wanted to keep the thing. We played around the counter spell and got hit by the discard spell. Sometimes the way the cookie crumbles. Yeah, that's pretty tilting that our opponent wasted our time that badly. But maybe they're new to their deck and they're just trying to get to grips with it, which is fair enough. That happens sometimes. All right, let's go to the next round. We're on the play for round 2. We have Utopia Sprawl into Enchantress, around a daze into Enchantress Presence. I think this is probably what I've described as a keep. Now we could slow roll it and just try and get the... I'll go to the Enchantress, but I think the best play here is to set this up and try, instead of trying to get extra value off our Utopia Sprawl. Right, so our opponent's turn. So next turn we have Argothian Enchantress with mana paying around daze. I think we just play out this forest first. Brainstorm. Okay, our opponent appears to be looking for some sort of answer to this. Or they're setting up their hand to basically kill us next turn if they're like a show and tell deck. Depending on if they counter this, will give us a little bit of impression of what their deck is. If they're a combo deck, they probably don't care about the Enchantress. Minor misstep. Okay, so our opponent is probably not a combo deck. Because the Enchantress doesn't represent anything too scary for a combo deck, in my opinion. Our opponent missed on their land. That's interesting. Let's play this, leaving our fetch land up. Days. Alright. They got Stifle here. They do have a Stifle. Wowzers, trousers. Alright. One of those days, I guess. We could have played around the Stifle there, to be honest. I didn't want to expose myself to a potential wasteland, but considering they missed a land drop, I probably shouldn't have worried too much about that. That's probably on me there. Let's put Karakas out. Let's play another Enchantress. Right, this one sticks. If they play a creature, we have the Thin Ice for it. If they play a legend, we can bounce it, but opponent's still not got anything. We don't really have anything ourselves. I don't know if our opponent is going to have a bunch of lands or not. I do want to play this Boseiju. Force of Will, Brainstorm. Stifle definitely makes you think they're an aggressive deck. But Boseiju could kill something like a Phyrexian Dreadnought in a pinch. So I think we just play this out and get ourselves a card deeper. I'd rather keep the Boseiju as a spell for now. Okay, our opponent's just scooping because we've got a card advantage engine and they've got nothing going on. So, my expectation is that our opponent is... If you play Stifle, you're probably playing Wasteland. Or you're playing Phyrexian Dreadnought. If you're playing Phyrexian Dreadnought, I'm going to want these Fateful Absences. Where did they go? They went there. That's a way of killing them. I don't know if this is going to be a Thoughtseize type matchup. I think our Solitary Confinements might have some pretty good text. Same with our Rest in Pieces. Is this going to be a matchup where we want our Green Sun Zenith? We're not really get any cool targets for it. I think we can probably board like this. Is Carpet of Flowers going to be better? I think it's going to be better than one of these, right? I think we can just swap these out for carpets. And then we just need to find one cup for our Fateful Absence. I suppose it's probably a Sterling Grove. We can reappraise the situation. We have a better idea what our opponent's doing. We have Utopia Sprawl up the wazoo, so let's keep this. If we draw another land, it's pretty good for us. If we don't, it's not the end of the world either. Obviously, we'll need to draw another land at some point, but that's a problem for later, perhaps. We'll see what we draw. Right, we did draw a land, not one I necessarily want to have in hand. Alright, what we got here? Consider. That's an unusual one to see. That's usually a Doomsday type spell. So I think with this one we named white so we can cast Sythis next turn. We probably have to play out the Boseiju as a land. Hopefully we'll draw another land so we don't have to do that. I'm really hoping we don't have to do that now. Excellent. Now the problem with playing this is we don't get to follow up with a Utopia Sprawl. I think it's still worth doing though. So we're playing around a days here. Utopia Sprawl on this. We get ourselves a card and a life. This one can name green. So they might wasteland up Boseiju, but that feels bad considering we're pulling ahead mana-wise. Mycosynth Gardens, yeah, our opponent is on Dreadnought. Alright. This is a new one if you're not familiar with it. Basically for one and tapping it you can copy Phyrexian Dreadnought. Like so. Slip out the back. Okay. So there. This is the phasing spell. I see. So we're coming on their turn. Interesting. Right. Let's draw some more cards, gain some more life. Let's get Carpet of Flowers on the go. Go to the next main phase. This only has 1 mana, but that's still 1 mana. Yes. Green. So then we will put this Wild Growth on this. Draw another card, gain another life. We'll play a land for turn. So we tap this, and we got a load of mana here. So let's put Wild Growth on this. We probably should have put it on the plains, actually. Thinking about it. Let's have another white one there. Got 2 mana left over. Can't really do anything with that. It's cost 3. So I think we're passing a turn. So we can take a hit from the Dreadnought this turn. And then next turn try and on Thin Ice it. We also have Solitary Confinement. So we might be able to get our opponent. Sure, I don't think we're going to have any sort of weird double strike shenanigans. Start with white mana. Let's cast this targeting this. So worst case scenario, they copy the Dreadnought. And then they also protect their Dreadnought. That would be real bad for us. But we do have this Solitary Confinement, which is hopefully going to do some work. Force of Negation. Pitching Murktide Region. Understood. So now what we're looking at here. Tap this for a whole bunch of mana. Force of Negation. Let's level this. We can't level this again. We don't have enough mana for that. Do you think our opponent can make this guy bigger? Probably not. Let's play this out and represent something. I don't think the 1 damage here is going to be relevant, so we hold it back on blocks in case we just soak up 3 damage somehow. That Solitary Confinement wouldn't have been great because we didn't actually have another enchantment. We're kind of hoping to draw one off of the cast trigger for it. Alright, take our beats here. We've sort of bricked a little bit on juice here. On thin ice. Use Carpet Flowers ability, yes. Make a white mana. Cast using our white mana. We'll target on this. What do they got? Okay, they're just making sure they have a Dreadnought. Get rid of the marginally bigger one. So now we're in a bit of a bind, actually. So we can try and spin into Helm of Obedience to soak up damage. How much damage do we realistically think we can soak up from what's in our opponent's deck? If we get an Uro, that gives us 3 life and a card. So I guess we tap this 1, 2, 3. So how much mana do we need to keep left over is the question. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana right now. We're looking for on thin ice or the flickery ones. That's 2 mana to flicker this. And I'll turn it back into a land, which is probably fine. So we're basically trying to find Uro first. So we need to keep 2 mana back, which means we do we have a land? We do. We do have a land for this. We have at least a Bayou. Alright, let's get Snow-Covered Forest. We'll keep back 2 mana sources here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see if we hit. A Brazen Borrower. That wasn't the one, was it? So this rumbles through for lethal next turn. Sure, we'll concede. Yeah, we just drew nothing but lands, so that was quite unfortunate for us. If they're all in on these things, I think maybe we even want these Force of Vigors, to be honest. I think they may be quite tasty here. We know they've got Uro as well, so we do want to keep our Helm of Obedience package in. Is Solitary Confinement going to be good against them? I have to imagine it is. Maybe it's these 2 Sterling Groves. They just seem a bit slow to me. Alright, we've got more answers for the Dreadnought. If we had Wild Growth, this is possibly keepable, but I don't think we can keep this. We definitely can't keep this. We can't cast any spells. This only enchants a forest, so our hand doesn't actually do anything. Yikes. Guess we keep this. 3 cards on the bottom. So we need to keep our basic forest here, I think. Or we could keep our Savannah and just be really cold to Wasteland. So we'll definitely get rid of the Bayou. Probably don't need the Rest in Peace. And then it's probably one of these. I guess the On Thin Ice has more synergy and we can play it around a day. So it's probably the Fateful Absence that goes. Like, we're in a pretty dire spot here. Wild Growth. So we could play like Enchantress next turn. That would be nice. That's our way back in this game. So we got absolutely ruined by the fact that we had these Boseijus in our deck. That's pretty bad. Can I afford to play around days? I don't think so. This is an easy Force of Will if our opponent's got one, or a days, sure. While we don't have any lands in hand, we're going to need that, and at least that's slowing them down a turn so we can maybe draw into something else. I think if we just sit there letting our opponent make land drops, it's going to go badly for us. Ponder. Carpet Flowers is a pretty good one. This does give us a little bit more mana. Not a lot though, but it's the same as a Wild Growth. So, except it can give us other colours. So it's going to be very hard for our opponent to shut us off of this On Thin Ice when the time comes. A Brainstorm from our opponent. Polluted Delta, sure. Solitary Confinement. Just do this now so it won't go later. So, the Solitary Confinement is not great for us, but it could be useful down the line. We can always use it as a 1-turn fog, worst case scenario. We're now getting 2 mana off our carpet because there's 2 islands on the other side of the board. So if we can get some Enchantresses going, we'll be doing alright. It looks like our opponent's getting ready to Murktide Region would be my guess. Which is something that we can thin ice away. Mycosynth Gardens, okay. Was this dressed down into Dreadnought? No, it's just a Murktide Region, sure. We have an answer for that. Whether or not our answer works will remain to be seen. So we can try the Solitary Confinement as a bait spell, which I'm going to do. Okay, they didn't go for the bait. Interesting. They had the force. Sure. So this Solitary Confinement is just getting sacked on the next turn, because we do need to draw cards here. But this is just a gain 8, which is not great. We got pretty unlucky in this match to sort of brick on stuff in one of the games and then have to multi 4 in the other one. But then again, our opponent did get stuck on 1 land in the first match. So swings and roundabouts, right? You can tap your guy for no reason. It's cool with me. Go to draw. Sythis. Force of Will plus Daze. We're not going to cast a Solitary Confinement because if we draw something that can draw a card off of it, maybe we can set up a little defense. We only do this as a fog when we absolutely have to. The last one we did is a bait spell. So probably losing our Savannah here. It's not the end of the world. We've still got 4 mana. You got another counter spell? Sure. They've had like 4 Force of Will effects, right? No, 3 Force of Wills. Yeah. Like our opponent's just non-stop counter magic over here. So on our next turn, we might have to play the Solitary Confinement as a fog. Not great. This is a sort of hand where if we'd have kept a 7, we would have probably just crushed right through it. Because they're doing all these 2-for-1s. So we'll add... Has to be white if you want to cast a Solitary Confinement, doesn't it? Unless you want to play the Utopia Sprawl first. Do we want a Utopia Sprawl in play? Or do we want it as a thing that we can draw a card with next turn? That's an interesting choice, actually. Because if we draw like Sythis or something, and then play the Utopia Sprawl, we won't have a second land, actually, will we? So I think we just need the mana here. So let's go green. And this will name white. We'll cast this, draw and buy ourselves a turn. And then hopefully draw into something like On Thin Ice. And maybe pull back into the game. It's possible. But just starting 3 cards down has been so backbreaking. Nope, we got nothing. Sure. Okay, I feel we got a little bit unfortunate in that one. So our opponent was just all the Force of Will effects, even when we tried to get in the game. And because we started on so few cards, that actually works against us. Whereas if we have more cards, that doesn't really work because eventually we end up with more resources than them and we can just go through. But that's how the game is sometimes. All right, we're 0-2, not a great start. Let's see if we can pick it up a bit in the 3rd round. We're on the play for this round. What does our hand do? Paladin Class into Enchantress, I think we can keep this one. We're a little bit cold to Wasteland, which I'm not a fan of, obviously. But if we can set up our Enchantresses and just Solitary Confinement, then I think we're good. Things get worse against a blue deck, but hopefully Paladin Class helps that out. I've definitely played against this opponent before, but I can't remember what they normally play. I've got a feeling it's a blue deck. Maybe not. Marsh Flats isn't a very blue card. This could be Reanimator. Unmask targeting us. Sure. Probably going to take our Solitary Confinement. Although that doesn't stop Archon of Cruelty from killing us. No, we just took the Enchantress. Badlands. Entomb. Have they got a Lotus Petal to follow this up with? Grizzlebrand. They don't. Why are they doing it sorcery? Oh, because of our Paladin Class. That's why they're doing sorcery speed. I take it back. That makes sense. That would have been a wonderful turn to draw Rest in Peace. So I think we are going more growth on this Savannah. Playing out Destiny Spinner. We don't know how much of our hand is going to be left next turn, so we may as well try and get some stuff down. I suspect our opponent is just going to make Grizzlebrand and kill us in the immediate future. Okay, they reanimate, so we weren't punished for playing the Boseiju as a land to try and get rid of Animate Dead. Although they would have been able to get 14 cards or 7 cards out of it first. So. They only get the 7 because of the reanimate. Sorry, they only get the 14, right? Yeah, no, they only get the 7, right? Yeah, because they reanimated, so they've taken 8 plus 7. Okay, we have a Solitary Confinement that does nothing. That's always fun. They've shown us the Underground Sea, which they didn't really need to do. That means we know they've got Show and Tell as an option in the sideboard. We can play a Solitary Confinement as a fog to stop our opponent drawing more cards. Is that worth doing? I think that's just the level we're at right now. Our opponent is doing something very powerful and we're doing something that's not particularly powerful. If they make a mistake and attack, then we might be able to swing back. We will not. That was a fog. A forest. Yikes. Do I like the idea of our opponent drawing 7 more cards? Not particularly. Maybe we're just going to level up here. Maybe make our opponent fear that we could Paladin Class them next turn if they don't have a blocker. Or make them not want to pay 7 life at least. Right, we're probably 10% to win this game right now, I say. We got to play for that 10%. Faith is looting, sure. Are we getting another creature into play this turn? Seems likely. No, just a Grizzlebrand in the bin. Okay, that's alright. Unmasked. So we're going to lose our Solitary Confinement so we can't fog again. So our Destiny Spinner can at most do 6 damage next turn. So they shouldn't be drawing cards necessarily. They don't need to. Boseiju. Okay. If we draw a land next turn, we can probably kill our opponent if they don't keep their Grizzlebrand back. There's a weird world where we can win this game. That 10% I think has risen to 20 now. Now our opponent might feel themselves in a situation where they need to just draw some extra cards. This looks like a flashback to Faith's Looting. Sure. Now if they find an Archon of Cruelty, it's lights out. Same with Serra's. The one that stops you from getting... that would give you protection from something. That's the one. Semmer's Emissary, that's the one. So it feels like we're getting that put into play against us. Not great for us. And a Dark Rich, for good measure. Oh, they're entombing. Okay, so this is Archon of Cruelty and it's game over. Well, that game was closer than it needed to be. So, endurances, we would like these. Thoughtseizes, we kind of need those. This feels like it's going to be a pretty rough matchup for us. Rest in Peace should be good here. Solitary Confinement feels bad. I don't think we want that. We've got some removal spells. I don't think the Paladin Class... The one thing the Paladin Class does do is give us the ability to get some damage in to make Grizzlebrand activations less likely, as well as giving us the ability to make our opponent have to entomb in their turn like they did then, which could open us up for some Rest in Peace. Now, we know they have Serenity in their sideboard options. So do we want to try and deal with Serenity? Or do we want to try and... Do we want to try and force a Vigor to deal with the Serenity? That doesn't feel like a great situation. I guess we don't need these Destiny Spinners. So I suppose we can keep these in. They also hit Animate Dead. And take out the Destiny Spinners. This looks pretty bad. Like, we could bring in something like Collect Roof just to try and slow down their... like Lotus Petals, but that again feels real bad. I think we just submit like this. This is just a case of we're playing a deck that's kind of outclassed in the field right now. It's got a load of mana, but it doesn't go anywhere. We need to mulligan this for some sort of action that affects our opponent's graveyard or does stuff. Drawing an additional card on turn 3 is not good enough. Thoughtseize we can't cast until turn... No, we can't cast at all because of the horrible mana base in this deck with the Boseijus. Nope, I think we have to go again. Is Force of Vigor good enough to keep here? With the Karakas, maybe? So, the Serra Sanctum probably not doing a lot here. Probably get rid of a Stone-Covered Forest. We probably keep the Sythis. We have to lose one more of these things. It's probably going to be the Enchantress's Presence, I guess. So we've got the emergency pitch for whatever our opponent deploys. Now the question is, do we play out the Karakas first? In case our opponent make a Grizzlebrand, or do we try and make them get the Grizzlebrand with an Entomb? I think that's probably better, so we're going to play out the Savannah first. Because if they have the Entomb, they're just going to get a different creature if we play out the Karakas, whereas if they get a Grizzlebrand and we bounce it, we might be able to stem the tide a little bit. Probably losing the Sythis here. Unless they're... Yeah, okay, there's the Sythis. Over to us. So now they've seen the Karakas, there's no harm playing it out. We have a land that doesn't tap for mana. So this is the second time we've had to mulligan to 4 in this deck. Not ideal. On thin ice. So we have a removal spell for a creature. We will play out our Serra Sanctum because there's no reason not to here. So maybe they're on just the draw and discard line with Faith's Looting and we can maybe get them. Like something like an Archon we can deal with. Okay, our opponent probably just kept a Serenity hand, to be honest. Like, we're drawing lands. We can cast all the spells in our deck at this point. Actually, that's not true. We can't cast the Helm. A Lotus Petal? I'm going to be hard casting some of these threats soon. This could go... This could be a... Okay, no, I thought it might be a Show and Tell turn. 4 mana. Unmasked, targeting us. Sure. It might just be a case that the only thing they can put in is a legend. So we've got Thoughtseizes in our deck, so I'm going to get the Bayou here. Green Sun Zenith. So this can find us a Sythis, or it can find us... It can't find us an Endurance. It's just pulling out a Sythis here good enough. Probably. Turns on our Serra Sanctum for next turn. It's probably... I'm just trying to work out which of these is better. How relevant is the life gain going to be? Maybe we just want the Enchantress. Just trying to think what things our opponent could have. Enchantress itself doesn't get killed by Serenity, so I think it's a slightly better name here. We lose 1 point of power and we lose the ability to draw cards. But it's not legendary. Might be relevant, I don't know. And it's not enchantment. Okay, so we're going to lose our 1 card in hand. We've been hit by 3 pieces of discard in our mulligan to 4. So it's a bit like the previous round where they just had loads of counter spells for things we're doing. I guess we play this out. Because if we get hit by an Archon of Cruelty, at least we have a land in hand. Now we just need to find ourselves some enchantments. Now, if Grief is the best thing they've got going on right now, then we're not in a bad spot. We just need to find some enchantments and start the ball rolling. So, where's this going to go? I guess we'll stick it on the Savannah. We'll play the Forest for the same reason we played the previous one. If we draw a Sythis, we can play it and then replay it using the Karakas and just get additional cards that way. Which is a little bit of an engine, but our opponent's representing Show and Tell this turn as an option because of the Underground Sea. That might just be the last fetch of when their deck there. We'll take another 3 from the Grief. This is a terrible play from our opponent. We just get this Sythis back in our hand now. And they just paid life for the pleasure of it. Do we think our opponent's just got a bunch of reanimation spells in hand? Certainly possible. Sorry, a bunch of creatures they want in their graveyard. Kind of don't want to cast this Thoughtseize, to be honest. So how much is this tapping for? It's tapping for 2 mana right now. So 2, 3. Okay, we're up and running now. Do I want to Thoughtseize our opponent? This can go horribly wrong. But I guess if they've got a reanimation spell, we can just take the reanimation spell. Animate Dead, Unmask, Dark Ritual. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm more worried. I think I'm more worried about the Dark Ritual than anything else right now. This is the thing that lets them cast their guy. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So if they drew the guy, they could hard cast it. If they don't draw the guy, then okay. We just need to kind of fade this turn, I think, and draw an enchantment. More enchantments, please, deck. Faithless Looting is pretty bad for us. Unmask, Show and Tell. So the Unmask is gone. Casting another Faithless Looting. 1 card in hand, and it's Animate Dead. On the Grizzle Branch. Draw 7 cards. A little bit risky. A Lotus Petal. And Entomb. Sure, this is going to get an Archon of Cruelty, no doubt. Yeah. And they got the reanimation spell for it as well. White mana, so this could be a Serenity. No, they're just cracking it for white because it's the first one on the list. Sure. I guess we sacrifice the one that doesn't gain us life. Or do we sacrifice this one? I think we sacrifice the one that doesn't gain us life. And we're probably discarding the Thoughtseize, so we at least have a way of winning the game if we draw the right card next turn. This also gives us more mana for our Serra Sanctum. Okay, so we're not going to win the game that way. Now if we draw Rest in Peace, we can cast it and it will cantrip into the right thing we need. So there's that option. So we bounce their Grizzlebrand. That's one less threat to deal with. A Wild Grace. We get to draw 2 cards here. And gain life. On Thin Ice, okay. And a Serra Sanctum. Put this on here. Let's gain some more cards. Goodbye, Archon of Cruelty. Put this Wild Growth on here. Draw some cards. We're putting up a good fight at least. What do we want this to name? I guess we name White. Cast this Paladin Class. Draw some more cards. Gain some more life. Thoughtseize that we're not casting. A Rest in Peace is a pretty good one. We'll probably use this white mana for this. Rest in Peace. So we still got green mana floating, so let's tap this one. Let's cast this. This doesn't draw us any cards, but this one does. Okay, we've got the win here. Let's see how they sideboarded. Trouser, whatever the new guy is called. What else have they got in there? Thoughtseize, Grief. Just Atraxa. Okay. They didn't board in Serenity, which is really wild considering we're an enchantment deck. Okay, do I have any changes I would like to make? Virtue's Ruin does kill some of their guys, but we kind of have killing their guys down with these spells. I think we're just best off with what we've got here. Yeah, let's just submit. Okay, I think our opponent probably could have played that game in a different way so they didn't lose that particular game. Now, quite what that would have been, I don't know. They did feel like they were bricking on draws for a while. Definitely shouldn't have reanimated our Sythis. That was definitely a weak point. Okay. We have Endurance. We have Rest in Peace. We can keep this. Our opponent began with 7 cards in hand, so they're probably going to beat us. So we'll play this. We will get a Savannah. This will give us a Paladin Class. So our opponent isn't casting the Entomb in our turn, at least. Maybe our little graveyard here will get there. Not a big fan of turns that start with Dark Ritual from our opponent here. They're just hard casting a Grief. Okay, that's not so bad. Don't get me wrong, it's not great. We're probably losing our Rest in Peace here. We're casting Rest in Peace if they don't take it, so. Or is this a horrible bait from our opponent? I think if we can get their graveyard covered in 2 different ways, that's probably a fine place to be. So they need Serenity and a discard spell and the ability to put creature in the graveyard. Now, this grief is going to hit us, but we've got enough stuff to be getting on with. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Show and Tell can certainly get us, though. Drawing in another land would be good. So I'm going to take another 3 here. This looks like a Show and Tell. Question is, what do we put in? We can put in Enchantress's Presence, because that's the expensive one. Or we can put in our Argothian Enchantress so we get more draws off of our Enchantress Presence. I think we're probably on Enchantress Presence here. Atraxa. Alright. What has the Atraxa got for us? So, Show and Tell, Animate Dead, Lotus Petal, Unmask. So they can get a whole bunch of these, right? So they definitely get the Dirt Ritual. They definitely get the Animate Dead. They definitely get the Lotus Petal. And then they get to choose which sorcery they get. Not finding a creature there is not the worst for us. Now obviously this is a pretty big clock. It's going to do some work. There's an Unmask. It doesn't actually tell us which cards they took. Okay, I'd very much like to draw the... what's it called? On Thin Ice would be a lovely draw about now. That's not on Thin Ice, is it? Thin Ice is very much what I'm on right now. We'll do what we can do. So next turn we can deploy the Endurance to chump block. Actually, it doesn't even save us, does it? Oh, we can double block the Grief and trade with it. Faithless Looting. Into our Rest in Peace. Sure. So this will kill the Grief and save us 3 life. And we'll only lose 1 Enchantress for it. And then the Endurance can block the Atraxa next turn. Really struggle saying this word, Atraxa. Now our opponent might just put something in the way, might just discard our hand or get another scary thing. Okay, we lose our Endurance. Understood. Alright, what do you got for us, deck? Basic Plains, sure. We're just done here. Alright. So we are 0-3, and my current evaluation of this Enchantress deck is not very favourable. We got 2 more to go. Let's see if we can make sure we don't get 0-5. We've won a die roll again. We have Rest in Peace Helm combo. That's something. I guess that's something to play towards. We have a bit of removal. Rest in Peace is actually relatively good interaction, I suppose. Maybe we're supposed to mulligan to find one of our guys, but this deck mulligans very poorly from my experience so far because you've got all these horrible lands that you can't actually put your things on if you keep drawing these Boseijus. And this hand is pretty serviceable. We have removal. We have a stable mana base that doesn't get wastelanded. We have a plan. It's not spectacular, but I'll take it. I think we'll play out this Windswept Heath to conceal as much information from our opponent as possible. There's a chance that we're supposed to crack it for a Plains before our opponent plays a land in case they have a Stifle deck. Savannah from our opponent. Noble Hierarch. So they probably won't have the most amount of interaction with what we're trying to assemble here. Okay, so we'll crack this for a Plains. We will Wild Growth onto our Plains. We'll cast a Rest in Peace. So we're not a million miles away from killing our opponent next turn. Now, is our opponent playing other colours? Inkmoth Nexus. Okay, our opponent is an Infect deck. Blighted Agent. So we can prevent the damage. We can also on Thin Ice this guy. Glistening Alpha. Okay, we can't on Thin Ice both of those guys. We'll play out this Enchantress into on Thin Ice. Force of Will pitching Blighted Agent. Sure. I think we were supposed to get rid of the harder one to block here. That doesn't really impact the clock a lot. But it means if we draw Serra Sanctum, it's now going to tap for 3 mana, which will be enough to deploy and activate the Helm. Let's see how bad this is for us. Just the 2. 2 of your finest Infect. Alright. And another guy. 1 card now left in our opponent's hand. Windswept Heath. 1, 2, 3, 4. So our choices are kind of interesting here. We can Solitary Confinement to buy ourselves a turn. I don't think our opponent can kill us with what's in play right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we just play out this Helm of Obedience and say, we can kill you next turn. I think that's better than a fog here. Because if we brick on... So we could play the Solitary Confinement just as a fog and then try and rip a land. But I don't necessarily think that's the way to go. And this is quite a good spot to play it. Alright. Our opponent agrees and we go to sideboarding. I would like some removal spells. I would also like some Thoughtseizes. This Doomwake Giant seems pretty good. Collector Roof, not so much. Force of Vigor can hit one of their guys. Not sure that's good enough. We didn't see any blue mana, so they might just be straight up Selesnya. Endurance can block stuff. It can also be a surprise. These are things that I'm considering putting in the deck. I don't know how good Rest in Peace is going to be in this matchup. But it doesn't feel like we're getting wins any other way, which is kind of worrying. But if we bore those out for some removal, that's looking a little healthier. Our opponent didn't show us the any blue mana that game. And they did fetch these... Oh no, they did show us blue mana actually, didn't they? Because they showed us the Blighted Agent, didn't they? What am I talking about? So we probably do want to keep the Paladin classes just so we can resolve our removal spells. Which means you probably can't afford to have these endurances in. And we're probably trimming a Green Sun and one of these 3-drops because they're going to be expensive. Now Rest in Peace might have text if they've got the Delve spell, but I don't think that's going to be enough of a reason to keep it in when we can have these things like Doomweight Giants that can just keep our opponent's board just gone forever. And the Sterling Grove finds them, so I think that's probably worth doing. Alright, we've got 2 removal spells and a Solitary Confinement. I think this is fine. We don't have one of our little guys, but again, I think that's probably fine. Touch the Spirit Realm is an uncounterable way of blinking a guy out, which is going to be pretty strong. I'm going to play this Wild Growth and hope that our opponent doesn't kill us this turn, which they can do if they've got things like Berserk and Invigorates. Let's see what they have. Noble Hierarch. Okay. No second mana source. Okay, okay. We're just taking the 2 here. 1 Invigorate. 2 Invigorate. Okay, we're just dead on turn 1, 2 there. Sure. We got 1 turn in that game. And obviously what we're doing as a deck is just very weak compared to what that was. So, I don't know if these carpets are going to be good enough. Are they going to be better than a Wild Growth? I think they probably are going to be slightly better than Wild Growth. Yeah, we got bodied pretty hard there. Let's just submit and hope we can do it. This time being on the play is going to make a reasonable difference. I'd very much like to avoid the 0-5. So if we can get this one, that'd be nice. So this hand makes turn 2 Enchantress, turn 3 Enchantress Presence, but we have no acceleration. We don't really have any interaction. I think we have to mulligan. Jeez. This Boseiju is so bad. It's not the reason why this hand's bad, but it's not helping us out. We have to mulligan this one. Alright, we have a removal spell. We have a bit of ramp. 2 cards have got to go. It's probably this Boseiju. Our opponent can run Wastelands in their deck, so we will just be Utopia Sprawling on here. And we'll name... do you want green or do you want white? We have a Plains in hand. I think we'll name green. It's better if we draw more of our Sprawl effects. Glistener Elf. We could be dead on the next turn. So we have a choice. We can play this Enchantress's Presence and try and get into the game, or we can just hold up this Fateful Absence. I think we'll hold up this Fateful Absence. Inkmoth Nexus. Cool, cool, cool. We're not going to fire off the Fateful Absence if they don't pump it. We can fire it off end of turn. Another Glistener Elf. Yikes. Garfield. Our deck feels like we're just playing Magic from so long ago compared to what everyone else is doing. And like Infect isn't even a particularly strong deck right now. I guess we play this and hope for the best, right? We can play the Sythis and block with it, but I don't know if we win that game. We may as well use our mana efficiently because we don't have access to our Thoughtseize now. Can our opponent kill us this turn with 6 cards in hand? Okay, if they're just drawing a card with the clue, maybe that's not so bad for us. And a Hierarch. So we could be dead if they have Invigorates. But we might get another turn. We are getting another turn. Okay, this Bayou is actually pretty good for us. Let's see what you're working with. Invigorate, Force of Will, and Vines of Vastwood. So the Invigorate will make this guy lethal next turn, right? 4, 5, 6. No, it won't be lethal. So the Vines of Vastwood won't be lethal either. Okay, we'll take the Invigorate. And then we'll play out our Sythis. And draw a card. Alright. Many Inkmoth Nexuses on the other side of the board is a little bit scary. There's a Misty Rainforest. So this turn we have to take this and hope that we can draw into something next turn. I think we're on Solitary Confinement territory right now. Our opponent has a Force of Will. They might not have a blue card to go with it though. Fateful Absence. That's a card, isn't it? So I imagine what happens here is our opponent... So the other option we have is we can hit our own guy and try and get the clue, but that's 4 mana. Won't be able to do anything with that. So if our opponent tries to get in with the Inkmoth Nexus and Vines of Vastwood Pump, we have to just kill whatever they Vines of Vastwood Pump and hope they didn't draw a blue card for their Force of Will. Okay, an Inkmoth Nexus coming in. That means the other one's probably coming in too. Or not. I don't know. Just in Mod Nexus. Just for 2. Kicked Vines of Vastwood. So here's the play. Can we Fateful Absence it, or did they draw a blue card? They drew a blue card! Okay, that's lethal, and we die. Sure, so we're 0-4. This deck feels like one of the worst decks I've played on my channel, to be honest, so far. But we've got another game. Let's see if we can avoid the 0-5. Our hand has mana, but doesn't really have anywhere to go with it. I think we're supposed to find an Enchantress. I guess we're mulligan again. We wanted Enchantresses. We've got Enchantresses. Okay. 2 of these cards have got to go. I guess we get rid of the On Thin Ice and Argothian Enchantress. That way we might be able to sit behind a Solitary Confinement. This is like the big no button. Let's see what we can do. An Ancient Tomb. A Lotus Petal. Is this going to be initiative? Lion's Eye Diamond. Okay, we're getting stormed. I don't know if our deck can beat Storm. Just straight up, I don't think our deck can beat Storm. Wishclaw Talisman. So this is going to be an Echo of Eons, maybe? No? Okay. We get to play a Windswept Heath. Our opponent played their entire hand. Not looking good for us over here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana. So they can cast a Peer into the Abyss if they've got one, if they're the mono-black Storm deck, the Tennis Companion build. And if they cast Peer into the Abyss, we lose the game. Ad nauseam. Okay, so this has a fail rate. We do get to see some of their deck. Let's have a look. Okay. So they've got 2 mana left over. They haven't made a land up this turn, so they've got 3 mana there, plus the Lion's Eye Diamond. What is Storm count? Storm count is 2, sorry. A Cabal Ritual, pretty good. But this should be enough. They don't need to keep going here. So, Lion's Eye Diamond. Let's see if our opponent knows how their deck works. If they Thoughtseize us, we'll concede. Dark Ritual. Okay, they're dressing us. We will concede. Okay, I don't think we can beat this deck, truth be told. So we've got some Thoughtseizes. We've got a Collector Roof. Got some Endurances that might be okay, but they didn't look like they were into Echo of Eons, so I don't really think this is going to be a worthwhile one. Force of Vigor has some text. Rest in Peace combo might be too slow here. Although, is that actually our quickest way of winning? How do we win the game with this deck? That's the question. So we're looking at... So we want to keep our green suns to find the Collector Roof. Solitary Confinement, preventing damage. Doesn't stop life loss. It does give us Shroud though, doesn't it, actually? So I think we can sit behind Solitary Confinement, potentially. Our removal spells aren't going to be great because of what our opponent is up to. They do have the big tokens, but that's what Force of Vigor is for. Yeah, there's a Saga. Sterling Grove is a little bit slow. Destiny Spinner, probably not necessary. I guess we are keeping our Helm of Obedience kill. Alright, let's give it a whirl. This hand doesn't do anything. It's way too slow. We can keep this and hope to draw a land and get to Collector Roof. Is turn 2 Collector Roof good enough? It's not even turn 2 Collector Roof, it's potential turn 2. I think we should mulligan this one. Alright, we've got a Thoughtseize. 2 cards have got to go. Get rid of Boseiju. And I guess we get rid of Destiny Spinner. Done. Let's see if we can collapse our opponent's hand with a single Thoughtseize. I suspect not, but this is all we get to do here. Cabal Therapy, Dark Ritual, Mishra's Bauble. The obvious choice here is probably the Dark Ritual. Or is it the Bauble? The Bauble makes the Mox Opal a lot worse. I think it's just the Dark Ritual here. They don't have black mana outside of the Mox Opal, so we can maybe just collapse the black mana. They're just going to be playing an Urza Saga game is what's actually happening here. Would I rather take the Mox Opal or the Bauble? I think we cut them off of their only black source for now. Yep, so there's a Saga. Our opponent play out this Bauble. If you draw a Force of Vigor, I guess we can take out their Saga. What do we got here? I think we just play out the Sythis here rather than the Wild Growth and the Sythis, just so we can draw the card on the next turn. This will definitely take over a game pretty effectively. I doubt our opponent would hit with the Cabal Therapy if they named us right now, but I also don't think they're going to be casting that because they're just going to be Ancient Tombing. Ooh, a Swamp. And a Dark Ritual. Thoughtseize targeting. Okay, so we're going to lose our Wild Growth. And then they're just going to make a token, sure. And they got a Bauble to follow up with. Green Sun Zenith. We have a Green Sun Zenith target we've specifically put into our deck. Let's go and get it. Yep, They know what's coming, so they've used their bauble in response. Collector Oof. Let's shut down our opponent's artifacts. That should make the Storm Kill a little bit difficult, and their Construct token, because they didn't play the Ancient Tomb, they're not going to be able to make another one here either. So we're not in a terrible spot. Now, I don't know what they're finding off of this. A Shadow Spear. Okay, so they can't put the Shadow Spear on until they get rid of our Collector Roof. They probably have ways of getting rid of it. Also, they can just attack with the Construct, and at some point, if I brick enough times, then I'm going to have to let it try and block it. But hopefully that's not going to happen, and we're going to gain some life and play some enchantments. I guess we'll play this land out. Our opponent is representing opposition agent. I'm not going to attack into it. Lion's Eye Diamond, this is going to pump their construct to a 3/3. So this is sort of the other half of the deck. Going to be tricky to beat. Solitary Confinement. This is a redraw. Is that good enough? Our opponent's got loads of... we'd rather have a green mana. I think we're more likely to have green mana as our thing, right? So let's do this. Let's go for a redraw. I'm just going to play this out. Just buy ourselves a turn here. I don't think we're going to be able to Solitary Confinement lock for a while. We just need to draw into more velocity in terms of more Enchantress effects. If we can draw Enchantress's presence, that would be lovely. Our mana base isn't really under threat in this matchup, so we can get Savannah. A Rest in Peace. Sure, this is a redraw. I will take it. This is one of the sort of cards that we're looking to draw here. We're going to leave up black-green. It's going to do Thoughtseize or one of the other things. So we can destroy an artifact if we want to. We can destroy that Ancient Tomb as well. So we're in an okay spot. There's the bauble. This is just going to pump their construct token. I think we can take 4. We can blow this up whenever we need to. Now, if they played another Saga, I'd like to have the Boseiju to kill that, for example, rather than just hitting this 4/4 and we can sort of outpace it, hopefully. Let's draw some cards, gain some life. Now we're rolling. Oh, he's going to break again. Okay, no, we're still going. It's going to enchant a forest, so I guess we'll put it on the Bayou. Draw some more cards. So we kind of make the damage off of this relatively irrelevant. And we'll name white for this. How much mana have we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yeah, we should have enough for this. So how much is this tapping for? 5. Alright. I can't actually activate it because of my own Collector Roof. Interesting. Tap the Collector Roof. If the Collector Roof dies, we kill them with our Helm of Obedience. Lion's Eye Diamond. We'll take 5 from this. I don't think we take another hit from it though. Infernal Tutor. What are they revealing? A Cabal Ritual. Okay, so the plan is to finish us off with the Tendrils next turn. Let's hope that doesn't happen. A Rest in Peace. This is a life and a redraw. Let's Thoughtseize our opponent. Let's take this Tendrils of Agony. So they got 2 Cabal Rituals, Burning Wish, and a Cabal Therapy. Let's play this. This draws us cards and gains us life. Okay, so they're scooping that one up. Do we want more things to deal with as a Saga tokens? I don't think we do. I think we can beat the Urza Saga token relatively effectively. Maybe the Sterling Grove. Maybe we're swapping these out on Thin Ice. One of them. Let's try that. Our opponent's on the play, so our chances of winning this game are very low. Oh, look at this hand. It doesn't do anything. Mulligan. We have a Thoughtseize that we can cast on turn 1. Our hand doesn't really get better than that. We also have a removal for a Saga or that sort of jazz. We'll keep this. We're probably pitching the Karakas. No. This is getting a Bayou. So I think we have to get rid of the... Oh, yikes. What do we get rid of here? I think it has to be the forest. This is black-green. This is white. This is a Boseiju if we need it. Yeah, okay. Let's hope that our opponent doesn't do anything too scary on turn 1. And we get to hopefully punch a hole in their hand with our Thoughtseize. Vault of Whispers. Thoughtseize. Okay, we're probably losing our own Thoughtseize here, but it could be the Enchantress. It's not the Enchantress. I see. So we have a choice here. We can either put the Wild Growth on our Bayou here, or we can save it for the Argothian Enchantress. I think we just have to put it on here, right? Our opponent's got all sorts of discard and things. We may as well get our bits and pieces going. I suspect we're not going to get many more turns in this game. We might get one more turn. So at least this way, we have the chance of maybe casting 2 spells next turn. Alright, if they're just on the Saga line, that's okay for us. Cabal Ritual. Yikes. Dark Ritual. So this puts us up to ad nauseam mana. Okay, so we're dead this turn. Sure. Unless our opponent bricks horribly. So far, not so good, but it also hasn't hit them for much damage yet either. Wishclaw. I got Mox Opal there. This does it. This is enough. Tendrils of Agony is kind of awkward for them. They need to find a Burning Wish now, right? I guess they have the Wish or Talisman, so they can go for the Burning Wish that way. Yeah, so our opponents should be able to have this one. We'll just let them play out. So 2 baubles, an LED, Mox, another LED, the bauble, Lotus Petal, Tide Ritual, the other Mox, another Mox, a Duress. Go ahead, we haven't got anything that does anything. Just the Tendrils. I didn't even need to use anything else. We had enough mana. Alright, so that went terribly. We went 1-2 in all of our matches. Not very good. Let's have a little chat about the deck. Honestly, I think this deck is bad and you shouldn't play it. Now, that's obviously what I'm going to say when I 0-5, which is something that I very rarely do here. Even with some of our weird and wonderful things, we tend to do better. But I think the problem with this deck is it fundamentally is doing something that's not very powerful. Even when you're firing on all cylinders, it still doesn't feel like you're doing very much. Like, we got some mana ramp, but what is our mana ramp doing? Casting these things that maybe draw us cards. We're not actually getting to do very much in our deck until, you know, turn 5 or 6. Unless we can sort of luck sack a nice Helm of Obedience kill super early. So our deck just doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any board presence. Like, we have a little bit of removal here and there. But the only thing it's really going to be beating are these sort of slower control decks where we did get unlucky to lose against that deck. But it just feels like we're doing something that's not powerful enough for Legacy. It's probably not even powerful enough for Modern, to be honest with you. It feels more like we're doing some like a standard type thing here. Like a really strong standard deck is kind of how this feels to me. Not that I really play standard, but last time I did play standard, I seem to recall doing things a bit more busted than this, to be honest. That's not to say that you can't get there if you get the right matchups and whatever, and your things line up the right way, sure. Pretty much any deck is capable of 5-0ing a Legacy League. Now, the percentage chance of doing that with this deck, in my opinion, is incredibly low. Like, we don't have anything in our sideboard for combo, really. There's no Deafening Silence, for example, which would be an enchantment that is really good in the meta right now because there's loads of combo decks. So it's kind of wild to me that we don't have that in here, to be honest. That seems like a real obvious miss. Now, obviously, we're trying to cast multiple spells as well, but when we board it in, it's just going to be so much better against our opponent than it is against us. If we're casting one non-creature spell a turn, we can cast like an Enchantress or a Sythis into another enchantment and draw some cards, and that's fine. It's shutting down our opponent from winning the game, because there's quite a lot of Storm variants around at the moment. Also, Rest in Peace is a pretty slow form of Graveyard Hate. It's not really good enough a lot of the time. Like we saw against Reanimator, it didn't do anything for the most part against Reanimator. It was just kind of there. They could either do their stuff underneath it, or they could ignore it and just play these Griefs or Show and Tells, or they could discard it from our hand. Like Sterling Grove, a 2-mana thing to give your enchantment Shroud. Like, if you're drawing cards off it, great, but then, again, it doesn't impact the board. And at this point, if you're not impacting the board significantly by turn 3 in Legacy, then your deck's not really very viable, in my opinion, right now. Which is, you know, it's a shame that a deck like this, which is sort of an old staple back in the day, like when I first started playing Legacy, you know, there was always an Enchantress player somewhere. Now, that was obviously a very long time ago. It was before we even had Sythis, actually. So it was just running the Argothians and Enchantress's presence, but we just don't have the ability to play this sort of deck in Legacy right now. The amount of things that have to go right and get lucky in order to win a league with this. Now, I'm not saying I played perfectly. This is the first time I've ever played Enchantress, but it didn't feel great. We had to mulligan heavily a lot. Our mana base felt awful in this. So we have these Serra Sanctums, which aren't initial mana sources. So we're down to 17 lands. We have these Boseijus, which aren't forests, so you can't put Utopia Sprawls on them. So that shuts down some lines early on. We have this Karakas, which, again, is not going to help you play out your green sources to fix your mana. So you kind of get in this awkward situation where you can't necessarily cast some of your spells, so you have to mulligan a bit deeper. And the things you're doing once you do cast all your spells just doesn't feel strong. I think there's probably a powerful enchantment deck to be built, but I don't think it's this sort of old school card advantage Enchantress deck from days gone by. I enjoy the idea of some of the stuff in here, like the Doomwake Giant and the sideboard is pretty cool. And, you know, the Green Sun Zenith package is a bit weird to me. I understand why it's there. It's just another Enchantress plus a sideboard card. So it makes sense. You know, you've got the Collector Roof. But it just doesn't feel like we're bringing the right tools to the table to play Legacy right now. The Paladin Class was alright though. That was fine. Like pretty much all the games we won were through Helm of Obedience. Like we did win a game in every single round. So there is that. We didn't just go 0-10 in games. We went 5-10, which is, you know, not the best obviously, but it's not as if we got completely pounded every time. It's just over the course of 3 games, the percentage of our, like the quality of our deck is such a percentage lower than other decks that over the course of 3 games, it's going to be difficult to win. Like we definitely got spots where we could have won. We set ourselves up to possibly win, but the Enchantressy stuff just didn't feel very good. And because we're a white deck, it's very hard to, you know, get these good cards going on. We don't have any fixing. We're just trying to draw raw cards. And sometimes that works, but sometimes our pieces get taken out of our hand or they get countered, and then we just kind of don't have anything. If you take out the linchpin of a deck like this, like the Enchantress or whatever, then it's very hard to function because your deck can draw a lot of cards in a turn. But the thing is, this deck needs to draw a lot of cards in a turn, otherwise it doesn't do anything, which is the real problem. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be playing Enchantress on my channel for quite a long time now. It's left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth. But I've been working on an enchantment-themed deck that actually is designed with what the meta is like at the moment in mind, rather than sort of trying to play something that's an outdated deck that's sort of not really with it anymore. I'm sorry, Enchantress players. I don't think it's your time right now. That's not to say that things can't change in a few printings, but I don't think this sort of build is where you want to be if you're trying to play Enchantress at all. If you're an Enchantress player and you've got any thoughts on this, I'd like to hear them. I suspect you probably already know that the meta is pretty hostile to you. And I know how it feels. Some of the decks that I really love, like my beloved Blue-Red Twin, is pretty weak in the meta right now. But such is life sometimes, and we just have to suck it up and take the fire design until they ban stuff, I guess. And then maybe things will change when they get some Delver and Initiative bans. Maybe things will slow down so you can have a deck that actually has a time to take advantage of all these card draw effects. Who knows? We'll see. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this one. I think the previous video was a 5-0 and this one is an 0-5, so some sort of karmic justice in the world, I suppose, evening things out. Alright, likes, comments, subscribes. These really help me out, especially subscribers. If I can hit 1,000, I get monetized, so I can play decks where I don't mind going 0-5 as much because I'm getting the money back that I'm spending on play points or whatever. So that's always handy. Alright, thank you very much for watching. I hope this wasn't too much of a downer for you, and goodbye.